there is no word that comes out of God's mouth that comes back to him void, which if he said it, then it's being done. But the problem is they don't see nothing. Sometimes God's new thing often looks like nothing. Whew, God, I'm in the text, y'all. I'm in the text. Let me hide myself in the text right now. The Bible says this way, see, I am doing a new thing. But notice what the Bible says. It is the Lord who was declaring that he's doing a new thing. But notice what the text says next. He says, now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? In other words, God is doing a new thing. He said he's doing a new thing. And for those of you who are Bible-believing Christians, you understand that there is no word that comes out of God's mouth that comes back to him void, which if he said it, then it's being done. But the problem is they don't see nothing. I'm doing a new thing, the Bible says. But then he has to ask the question, don't you see what I'm doing? Don't you perceive what I'm doing? Because sometimes as God is working, his new thing may look like nothing. Woo! See, sometimes, man, as we're looking for God to move and anoint and bless, sometimes we're looking for all the evidences that God is working around me, and he's working through certain people, and he's working through certain circumstances. We want to kind of see a runway type of God where God can show us that he's making some moves and making some traction before he finally blesses. But I need you to realize sometimes when God starts working in your life, you'll never even see that God is working in your life, because sometimes God works in places where can't nobody see. Woo! Sometimes God is working on the inside of you before he can bless the outside of you. Sometimes God is working on your neighbor before he can finally talk to you about forgiveness. Sometimes God is working on the boss of the job you gon' have while he's telling you to leave the job that you've got right now. You're saying, God, I don't get it. How in the world is my situation now a blessing from the Lord? Not even realizing that God is already doing a new thing. Because sometimes God's new thing looks like nothing. Let me put it this way. I have a friend of mine. Remember, he called me. It's at Oakland University. And he called me to go to New York so I can do a 2-week crusade. Evangelistic crusades are hard, y'all. Preaching ain't hard. Teaching ain't hard. But the spiritual warfare is hard. And I remember going up there, and I said to him, man, at some point, I need to get away from the studies, and I just want to go out driving. I had never driven in New York before, but everybody tells me that New York drivers are something special. Come on, somebody. I said, New York drivers are something special because not only will they cut you off at a drop of a dime, but they'll do it while cussing you out at the same time. Come on, somebody. But I said, I want to try it out. Come on, somebody. And I got in the car, and real quickly I realized that there was an adjustment that I needed to make. Come on, somebody. In New York, you can't be a passive driver. You got to be an aggressive driver. Sound like you got some New Yorkers in the room on today. Come on, somebody. In New York, you've got to share the road with people. In New York, you've got to pay attention to signs. In New York, you're not just driving on open lanes. Sometimes you have to drive under bridges. Sometimes you have to be driving through, or most times you got to drive above potholes. Come on, somebody. Got to share the road with bikes. Come on, somebody. New York traffic is hectic. And it's bad because New York traffic is already bad. But then when you start looking across and peering into the windows of the cars next to you, it's like everybody want to fight you. Come on, somebody. So I remember, man, like I was driving, trying to be a Florida driver. Y'all know Florida drivers ain't even better. They're not better. Come on, somebody. They're not better. Come on, somebody. I'll say it. We're not better. But I'm trying to be a Florida driver in New York, and I got to this place on the highway where, like, you couldn't move at all. I'm not talking about 2-3 miles. I'm talking about stopped. It was traffic. Somebody say traffic. And y'all, people are honking their horns and people are cussing at each other. The windows are down and all you hear is New York accents of people talking back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I realized the reason why there was heavy traffic was because there were these big signs on the road that said men at work, and it was pointing with an arrow that told everybody to merge onto the 2 lanes to the right. Just told you, in New York, you got to be aggressive. Come on, somebody. And so folk on the side of the road, they're trying to get onto the lane, but you can't really move because there's too many cars trying to get into those 2 lanes. And y'all, I started looking at this in admiration of the New Yorkers, and then I realized that the reason why they're upset is not simply because they're in traffic, but they're upset because the signs say men at work. Well, nobody see no men at work. Big old signs on the road that says men at work, and it's got arrows pointing to help everyone to merge to the 2 lanes on the right. And it would be okay if you saw some men on the side of the road sweating and working. You would think to yourself that I'm doing a noble cause because I'm not trying to hit nobody. But when you're in traffic and you're trying to get to where you're trying to go and you don't even see men at work, what do? And so family, man, I was like, man, this is crazy. This is crazy. So we started to sneak up just a little bit. And finally it got to a place where no one could move, so I just got out of the car, y'all. My friend jumped into the driver's side, and I just started looking around, saw the signs, and I noticed something that I had not noticed before. Signs said men at work. There was no one that was visible on the surface of the road. But there were these manholes. There were these manholes that were in the road where if you look closely, you saw a light and you heard some men working. The men were not working on the surface, but they were working underneath the surface. And the reason why the signs were there is because even though we could not see the men working on the surface, they were doing a great work underneath. Somebody saying, Pastor, why are you telling me that today? Because I need you to understand that sometimes God's new thing might feel like nothing. I need somebody to realize in 2025 that God may start working in your life in a way where you cannot see his hand, where you cannot distinguish his presence, where you don't know how he's working that thing out. But I need you to know if God says he's going to do a new thing in your life, he might not be working on the surface, but my God will be working behind the scenes. I need somebody to hear me. It might not look like it, but he's working. It might not feel like it, but he's working. Woo! You might feel discouraged, but he's working. You might not see the end, but he's working. Your feelings may feel down, but he's working. He's working. He's working because God said it. And if God said it, then it's done. He's working.